There is a feeling hovering around Celtic Park just now that something might finally be stirring. That familiar sense of anticipation mixed with frustration that tends to define a January transfer window for this club. You look at the situation and you're never quite sure if movement is genuinely close or if it is just another cycle of rumours, monitoring and quiet waiting. Either way, there is plenty to get into because the squad picture is shifting, players are coming back, others are drifting out of contention, and the needs of the team are becoming more obvious by the week. One clear development is the return of Stephen Welsh. His loan spell at Motherwell has been cut short, and he is back in the building not because of sentiment or long-term planning, but because Celtic simply need bodies in the back line. The squad has been stretched thin for months, and with injuries piling up, the decision to recall him feels more like necessity than strategy. Welsh actually did himself no harm at all during his time away. He was trusted, he played regularly, and he became a steady presence for a Motherwell side that has been performing well this season. Starting almost every match he was eligible for tells its own story, and the way he was spoken about down there suggests he grew in confidence and responsibility. Coming back to Celtic, he almost feels like a new signing, even if that says more about the state of recruitment than anything else. There is still talk that he could leave again later in the window if another centre-back arrives, which in itself underlines how uncertain things remain. For now, though, he is needed, and that alone explains why the club acted when it did. When you are short of numbers and options, sentiment does not come into it. You bring back what you have and hope it steadies things, even temporarily. Looking at the wider squad situation halfway through January, the picture is not exactly comforting. Alongside Welsh returning, there is also Odin Holm, whose loan spell abroad never really got going. He is back, but there is little sense that he features in any serious plans. The conversation around him already seems to be about finding another move, likely another loan just to get him minutes somewhere. It feels like another example of business that has not quite worked out, leaving the club trying to manage assets rather than build a coherent squad. The injury list only makes matters worse. When you take out key long-term absentees, especially players who would normally be automatic starters, the depth drops off sharply, losing a first-choice right back, a central defender who anchors the defence, and an attacking wide player at the same time exposes just how thin things are. These players have been missing for a while now, which almost normalizes their absence, but it does not make the impact any less severe. It forces constant reshuffling and puts pressure on players who are already stretched. From there, the needs of the squad become painfully obvious. Up front, a striker is essential, and arguably more than one given the ongoing fitness concerns around the current options. Out wide, even with one player showing encouraging form and energy in recent matches, there is still a clear lack of depth and a genuine competition on the right. The improvement has been welcome, but relying on that alone feels risky. In midfield, despite flashes of improvement, there is still a sense that something is missing. Too often the tempo drops, the urgency fades, and the game drifts. What feels needed is someone who can inject pace, intensity, and a bit of edge, someone who can snap the team into life when things go flat. The left wing is another area that raises questions. There is uncertainty about whether the current options are really good enough to carry the team through the rest of the season. Even a short-term solution would feel like progress at this point. Add another centre-back to that list, and suddenly the demands of the window look huge. That is where realism starts to creep in. As much as all these areas clearly need addressed, it increasingly feels like the club is firefighting, is trying to patch holes rather than reshape the squad properly. The priority seems to be adding some quality, especially in attacking areas, just to stabilize things. That brings us to the striker links doing the rounds. One name that has surfaced is Kieran Bowie, and the language around it is familiar. Interest registered, monitoring, ongoing awareness of competition from elsewhere. It all sounds very non-committal, the sort of phrasing that keeps options open without promising action. Bowie has had a productive season domestically and is at an age where his potential is obvious. His goal return shows steady progress and suggests this year has been real step forward for him. The problem, as always, is the valuation. The reported asking price is significant by domestic standards, and it is hard to imagine Celtic paying that kind of money for a player coming from another Scottish club, even if the market has changed. The reality now is that English clubs are often willing to meet those fees without blinking, which shifts the balance of power. Celtic and others are no longer the automatic destination, and that forces decisions. If the manager and recruitment team genuinely believe Bowie can come in and improve the team immediately, then it becomes a test of ambition. Either you back that judgment or you watch him go elsewhere. Another forward linked from abroad comes with far less excitement. Reports suggest interest in a loan deal for a striker who has struggled for form and confidence this season. The numbers are not inspiring, and the tone around his situation suggests a player searching for belief as much as goals. That kind of move would feel like a gamble, a hope that a change of environment sparks something that has been missing. Given the current options, some might argue it is a risk worth taking, but it hardly screams long-term planning or clear direction. There was also talk of a young defender expected to arrive, only for injury concerns to derail the move. Discovering that surgery is required immediately raises questions, especially when the player had already been sidelined for weeks. It is hard not to be skeptical about why such a deal was pursued in the first place, and whether backing out now is about medical reality or external pressure. Either way, it looks increasingly unlikely to happen, adding another layer of frustration to a window already full of uncertainty. On the wings, there is interest from elsewhere in one of Celtic's brighter performers, though circumstances make a departure unlikely just now. At the same time, another wide player from abroad has reportedly expressed a desire to join, with talks focused on a loan and an option to buy later. At his age, he would arrive as a ready-made option rather than a development project, which might appeal given the immediate needs of the squad. Whether that turns into anything concrete remains to be seen, but it fits the pattern of this window so far. Plenty of noise, plenty of conversations, and a constant sense that time is slipping by. As the days roll on, the feeling around the club is that everything is being done on the edge, almost reactively, rather than with any real sense of control. Each new rumour seems to exist in isolation, never quite connecting into a clear plan, and that is what unsettles supporters more than anything else. It is not simply about missing out on targets or dragging deals out. It is the sense that Celtic are constantly responding to problems instead of anticipating them. Injuries, form dips, and lack of depth are not new issues, yet they continue to dictate the conversation every single window. Defensively, the situation remains fragile, even with Stephen Welsh back in the fold. The margin for error is slim. One more knock, one suspension, and suddenly the options look frighteningly thin again. That reality is what makes the idea of another centre-back so pressing, but also so frustrating when there is little evidence of progress. It feels like the club are hoping bodies return from injury before they are forced into decisive action, and that is a dangerous game to play in the middle of a competitive season where every drop point matters. The midfield debate is one that never really goes away either. On paper, there are numbers there, but games have repeatedly shown that balance and intensity are still missing. There are moments where the team moves the ball nicely, where possession is controlled, but too often it lacks bite. Transitions are slow, second balls are lost, and the opposition are allowed to settle. Bringing in someone with real energy, someone who can drive forward and impose themselves physically, feels like it would transform the dynamic far more than another technical player who wants time on the ball. Out wide, the inconsistency continues to define Celtic's attacking play. One week there is pace, directness, and confidence. The next it feels predictable and easy to defend against. Relying on short bursts of form is not a sustainable approach, especially when the season reaches its decisive stages. The idea of adding a winger, even on a short-term basis, makes sense purely from a tactical perspective. Fresh competition changes standards, sharpens focus, and prevents complacency from creeping in. Up front, the uncertainty is even more glaring. Goals have been spread thinly, chances have gone begging, and there is a constant sense that the attack is operating below its potential. Fitness concerns only amplify that anxiety. When your main striker options are either struggling for sharpness or managing recurring issues, it becomes impossible to build rhythm. That is why every striker link, no matter how uninspiring, generates debate. Supporters are not necessarily dreaming of marquee names. They are desperate for reliability, someone who can occupy defenders and turn half chances into goals. What complicates matters is the club's apparent reluctance to commit financially within the domestic market. The valuation of players north of the border has risen, and while it is easy to bristle at those figures, that is simply the reality now. Other leagues, particularly in England, have distorted the market, and Scottish clubs know it. Waiting for bargains that no longer exist risks leaving Celtic behind, especially when immediate improvement is required rather than long-term potential. There is also the psychological aspect to consider. Players know when reinforcements are needed. They feel the pressure of thin squads and constant reshuffling. Bringing in quality additions does more than improve the starting 11. It sends a message to the dressing room that the club is serious about pushing forward. Delays and half measures, on the other hand, can quietly erode confidence. Even if nobody says it out loud, the noise around potential departures adds another layer of tension. Interest from elsewhere in key squad players is inevitable, especially when individuals show form in an otherwise uneven team. Even if moves do not materialize, the distraction alone can unsettle things. Balancing that while trying to bring new faces in is never easy, but it is part of the job at this level. The concern is whether Celtic are equipped to juggle all of that without losing momentum. What stands out most is how familiar all of this feels. The language of being aware of players, monitoring situations, registering interest has become almost synonymous with Celtic in January. It creates an impression of activity without tangible progress. Fans have heard it too many times to be reassured by it now. They want to see deals done, shirts held up, players integrated into the squad before deadlines loom. Time, as always, is the enemy. Each passing match without reinforcement increases the risk. Every injury setback magnifies existing weaknesses. The window does not need to be spectacular to be successful, but it does need to be decisive. Adding one or two players who clearly raise the level would change the mood instantly. Failing to do so would leave the squad relying on hope, recovery timelines, and short-term fixes. At the heart of it all is a simple question about ambition. Does the club see this season as one to be protected, doing just enough to get through, or as one to be pushed, strengthening from a position of relative success? The answer will be reflected not in words, but in actions. Right now, the signs are mixed, and that uncertainty is what fuels the ongoing debate and frustration among supporters. As discussions continue behind the scenes, the expectation remains that something has to give, whether it is a striker, a winger, a midfielder, or a defender. The squad cannot remain as it is without consequences. The foundations are there, but they are fragile, and relying on luck or late turnarounds is a risky strategy. For a club of Celtic stature, standing still is rarely an option, especially when rivals are watching closely and the margin for error continues to shrink. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favourite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The Scottish Fitbar rumour mill has gone into overdrive, and this one's got folk talking from the West End to the Highlands. Whispers around Parkhead suggest that Andrew Robertson, Scotland captain and one of the country's most recognisable modern players, could be edging towards a sensational return north of the border, with Celtic quietly circling. Nothing's been made official, mind you, but as the saying goes, there's no smoke without fire. Sources close to the situation hint that conversations may already be taking place behind closed doors, the sort of low-key chats that rarely stay secret for long in Glasgow. Robertson's name being linked with the hoops has lit up phone-ins and social media alike, with supporters daring to imagine the left-back pulling on the green and white. It's the kind of move that would shake Scottish Fitbar to its core, not just for its sporting weight, but for the symbolism of a homegrown star choosing to come back. Those in the know say the appeal isn't just emotional. Celtic's project, the atmosphere at Parkhead, and the chance to be a talisman rather than just another cog could all be weighing on Robertson's mind. There's also the pull of family, familiarity, and the idea of leading from the front on Scottish soil. For the club, landing a player of his pedigree would send a clear message that ambition remains sky high. Skeptics, of course, are urging caution. Deals of this scale are never straightforward, and plenty of rumours have fizzled out before. Still, the chatter refuses to die down, growing louder with every passing hour. Whether this turns out to be the transfer that nobody saw coming, or just another tale in the long history of Scottish Fitbar gossip, one thing's certain: the mere suggestion has already set the country buzzing. Hello fan, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.